I woke up with a headache, a questionable memory of last night, and a glowing contract burned into my skin. Fantastic. My apartment looked like a thrift store, and a confetti cannon had a messy, passionate affair. Glitter clung to the curtains. A single silver heel slept on my couch like it had. A long night, sticky red solo cups assembled in the sink like a support group. The fairy lights I forgot to turn off hummed, making the edges of my skull fizz. I rolled over, groaned, and then froze. A band of soft gold light pulsed on my inner wrist. Not a stamp. Not a bruise. Not a cute temporary tattoo. It was a circle of script I didn't recognize. Filigreed letters winding around my pulse like a bracelet that had opinions. Okay, I said out loud, because denial loves an audience. Very funny. I scrubbed at it. The light warmed, then cooled against my skin like it was breathing. The letters shifted, actually shifted, rearranging themselves with a quiver that tickled my palm. I stopped breathing. Memory came back in broken glass. The bar's dim red lamps, 2 sweet shots. A dare I gave myself because I was 26 and very tired of losing. My ex's face, smug, practiced, the kind of handsome that photographs well and helps in venture pitches. Nathan. Then, a pen that wasn't a pen. Paper that wasn't paper. A signature that felt like falling. Put the spoon down, a man said, voice low and unfairly amused. I realized I had, at some point, armed myself with a spoon from the sink, sticky pink glaze clinging to it like frosting. I pivoted, hair in my mouth, socks gritty with glitter. He leaned against my dining table like he'd been born leaning against expensive wood. Tall, dark hair combed back with a shine that didn't come from my $3 conditioner, suit a shade too sharp for real life. His tie was the color of storm clouds. His eyes, if I'm honest, they were a problem. Cool amethyst. The kind of purple that should be illegal before noon. He smiled like a cat finding you in its favorite chair. Good morning, Ember. I tightened my grip on the spoon. You know my name. I know many things, he said. For example, you were going to call in sick, and then panic about rent at exactly 11:28. I'm here to save us both time. Who are you? Lucian, he said smoothly. Counsel. Like, legal counsel? Among other disciplines. He nodded toward my wrist. How's the fit? I hid my hand behind my back, which fooled exactly no one. What is this, some kind of UV stamp? Because I swear I have moisturizer that could... It's a contract seal, he said, coming a step closer. You signed it. With me, I would remember signing something with a stranger in a suit. You did remember the pen, he noted. Warm when you held it, coppery aftertaste, that would be the blood clause. Efficient medium. I went cold in the small of my back. I did not sign anything in blood. He considered, eyes dancing. You bled in spirit. That's not a thing. He shrugged. It is when I drafted. I had the faintest mental image, a napkin I'd thought was linen that wasn't, a signature that slid. Instead of scratching, a single word he'd murmured that my ears forgot but my bones didn't. This is a prank, I said, even as the golden letters hummed with my pulse. Nathan put you up to this. Or my ex-best friend. This is performance art. As flattering as it is to be mistaken for a struggling theater major, Lucian said, no, the agreement is binding. Consider it a retainer. I represent your interests now. My interests? Currently, he said, counting off on perfectly manicured fingers, protection, leverage, and a favorable outcome to the matter of your stolen intellectual property. And your general survival, of course. My general... survival? My throat did a small, squeaky thing I will never admit to again. From what? Glitter inhalation? Predatory men in Patagonia vests, he said dryly, and my competitors. But the vests first. I stared at him. He stared back, untroubled by the fact that my apartment smelled vaguely of orange vodka and despair. Up close, he smelled like the good part of winter: cold air, cedar, and something darker, like burnt sugar at the bottom of creme brulee. "I want out," I said. "Whatever I signed, I rescind." He glanced at my wrist. The script flared politely, as if eavesdropping. "Rescission is not available in the standard sense." Standard? Oh, come on. Everything has a return policy. "We are not a department store," he said, the corner of his mouth going crooked. "There are clauses." "There are always clauses." "Read them to me." I crossed my arms, which did not have the intimidating effect I hoped, because my oversized t-shirt said, "I'm not lazy, I'm on energy-saving mode." He obliged, and the letters on my skin answered him. Lines of light rising and falling with his voice like the world's fanciest. Karaoke, Article 1, the undersigned, hereinafter Ember West, enters into mutual protective covenant with the principal, hereinafter Lucian Arden. Article 2, consideration tendered, strategic counsel, guardianship, and reversal of material losses as reasonably determined by principal. Article 3, term, until satisfaction of core grievance or voluntary release by principal. My heart snagged on that last part. Voluntary release by you. Lucian's smile didn't reach his eyes. "It is a rare procedure," said every dentist ever, I muttered, and then pressed my fingers to the seal. It warmed under my touch. "This isn't real," I told myself, while my skin replied, "And yet here we are." He took in my apartment with a glance both surgical and uninterested, like triage, a tottering stack of UX textbooks, and half-finished wireframes on the coffee table, a thrifted French press, a plant I was definitely murdering slowly. "You need coffee," he said, "and electrolytes." "And absolution," I said. He ignored that, rolled up his sleeves with careful, expensive grace and moved to the kitchen alcove, navigating stray balloons like he'd been here 100 times. He found the French press on the first try, because of course he did. Rinsed it, measured grounds with infuriating precision. My spoon defense drooped. "You make coffee?" I asked. "I make everything," he said lightly. "Law, contracts, outcomes. Did you make me sign too?" He glanced up, the amethyst darkening. "I don't force, I incentivize. Last night you said you were tired of being the joke in your own story. You wanted a win. I offered terms. I was drunk. Legally conscious," he countered, "and tragically earnest." The kettle clicked. My wrist pulsed. I tried to breathe through the sudden pressure in my chest, like I was boarding a roller coaster I hadn't agreed to ride. "What happens if I don't want your help?" I asked, softer. He poured, waited, pressed. "Then you still have it. Consider it a terribly clingy umbrella. You can hate the umbrella. It will still keep you dry. Until you decide to release me. Until the core grievance is satisfied," he said. "And then, if I choose..." "Yes. If you choose," I echoed. The words tasted like a dare. "And if I don't want to be someone else's choice anymore?" For the first time, something shifted in his expression. The humor thinned, a line drew tight at the corner of his mouth. "Then get your win," he said, "and make me obsolete." The seal fluttered against my pulse like a startled bird. He set a mug in front of me, my favorite, the chipped one with a cartoon otter, and didn't comment on the lipstick rings or the crack in the handle. I couldn't reconcile the two images, a man who recited clauses like poetry, and a man who rinsed a mug without flinching at my mess. "Why me?" I asked into the steam. "There are other drowning people." He tilted his head. "You don't drown," he said. "You tread, stubbornly. It's inefficient and unglamorous. I find it refreshing. That is the worst pep talk I have ever received." "I can do worse," he offered. "Please don't." We stood in my little kitchen, me in sleep shorts and glitter, him in a suit that probably cost as much as my rent, the seal on my wrist strobing a steady golden yes, yes, yes I did not appreciate. Finally, I said, Nathan's demo is next week. He's presenting my interface as if it was his. If you're real, if this is real, then help me take it back. He smiled then, slow and bright, as a match struck in the dark. Article 2 in action, he murmured. Look at that. Progress on day 1. Don't, I said, pointing at him with the spoon again. Be smug in my kitchen. Impossible not to be, he said cheerfully, and moved toward the door. Get dressed, Ember. We have clauses to weaponize. Wait, I called after him. Where are you going? To fetch a proper breakfast, he said, hand on the knob. Also to remove a minor obstacle from your building's front steps. What obstacle? He smiled over his shoulder, eyes glinting wicked. A Patagonia vest. The door closed behind him with a soft click. The seal on my wrist warmed like a sunbeam. I looked at the spoon. I looked at the mug. I looked at the glitter and the future, and the contract I apparently couldn't return. Okay, I told the apartment, the otter, my pulse. Fine. Let's win. The cafe across from my old office hadn't changed. Same brick walls pretending to be rustic, same menu that treated oat milk like a religion, same barista with the man bun who refused to learn my name after 2 years. The only difference was me. And Nathan, sitting at a corner table like he owned sunlight. He still had that pitch face, warm smile, careful angles, eyes just bright enough to sell you something you didn't need. He wore a navy blazer I recognized from our early days, the one he used to wear when he wanted to look successful before he actually was. Now he probably had 5 of them, custom-tailored, lined up like trophies in his new walk-in closet. I hated that I knew this. Ember, he said, rising with practiced surprise, as if he hadn't texted me we should talk 2 nights ago. You look great. I did not look great. My hair was still mad at me from the party. My eyeliner had done a disappearing act. I was in the only clean blouse I owned that didn't have a wine stain. Sure, I said flatly, dropping into the chair across from him. I radiate success and hydration. He chuckled, the kind that showed teeth but never touched his eyes. Same sense of humor. Same sense of betrayal, I muttered into my menu. He either didn't hear or pretended not to. Nathan was excellent at selective listening. It was practically his love language. The waitress appeared, tired and efficient. Nathan ordered a latte like he was hosting a TED Talk. I asked for black coffee because I was awake enough to know sugar would make me cry. As soon as she left, Nathan leaned forward, elbows on the table, concern arranged carefully across his face. I've been thinking about us. Us. The word slid across the table like a cockroach. There is no us, I said. There could be, he countered smoothly. I mean, we were good together. Before things went sideways, I repeated. Interesting word for you, stole my code and married my best friend. His jaw tightened a fraction, the way it always did when reality refused to cooperate. The marriage, look, that wasn't planned. Yeah, people just trip and fall into vows all the time. He exhaled slowly, like he was the one suffering here. I'm saying we don't have to be enemies. We could even work together again. I stared at him. He smiled like this was a Hallmark movie and not the aftermath of career arson. Why now? I asked finally. His eyes flicked toward the office building across the street, the company we had built together until he cut me out. Because your old interface, it's getting attention, investors love it. And you're the heart of it, Em, always were. Ah, there it was, not nostalgia, not romance, money. You want me back on the project. I want us back, he said, too quickly. I laughed then, sharp and humorless. Nathan, you don't miss me. You miss intellectual property rights. He held up his hands, all injured innocence. Can't it be both? I was about to tell him exactly where he could shove his both when the cafe door opened and the temperature of the entire room changed. Lucian stepped inside like sin in a tailored coat. People looked, couldn't help it. He didn't walk. He arrived. Dark charcoal suit, black gloves tucked into his pocket, hair catching the weak winter sun like ink. His expression was pleasantly neutral, the kind of neutral that made you wonder what he was planning. Nathan followed my gaze, his brows pulled together. "Friend of yours?" I smiled slowly, something like that. Lucian spotted me, crossed the cafe, and stopped at our table with the poise of a man who had never once tripped over a sidewalk crack in his life. "Ember," he said warmly, like we were co-conspirators instead of accidental contract partners. "Hope I'm not interrupting." "Not at all," I said. "Nathan and I were just discussing the past. Tragic stuff. Very boring." Nathan looked between us, suspicion crawling up his neck. "And you are?" Lucian extended a hand with immaculate politeness. "Lucian Arden." "Counsel." Nathan shook it automatically, then blinked. "Legal counsel?" "Among other roles," Lucian said smoothly. "Ember and I have an arrangement." The way he said it, calm, pleasant, just ambiguous enough, was absolutely intentional. Nathan's eyes narrowed a fraction. I hid my smile behind my coffee. Lucian took the empty chair beside me without asking, folding his long frame with infuriating grace. "So," he said, glancing at Nathan like he was a mildly interesting spreadsheet, "this is the man who misappropriated your work." Nathan bristled. "I wouldn't say—" "Oh, I would," Lucian interrupted, voice all silk and knives. "Public records might too, if prompted." I nearly choked on my coffee. Was he threatening legal action or actual hellfire? With Lucian, hard to tell. Nathan tried to recover his smile. Ember and I were partners. Things got complicated. Lucian's smile didn't reach his eyes. Partnership implies consent. I watched the muscle jump in Nathan's jaw. For once, he didn't have a polished response ready. Lucian turned to me, tone softening. "You have that meeting later, remember? The one that might inconvenience certain people?" His glance flicked to Nathan like an afterthought. "Oh, right," I said brightly. "The one about intellectual property rights and corporate theft?" Nathan's smile cracked. Just a hairline fracture. But I saw it. Lucian rose smoothly. "We should prepare." I grabbed my coat, standing too. "Thanks for the coffee, Nathan." Truly enlightening. He opened his mouth, probably to charm, maybe to threaten, but Lucian was already steering me toward the door with a hand at my elbow, polite but unyielding. Outside, the winter air bit at my cheeks. I pulled my coat tighter. "You enjoyed that," I accused. Lucian's mouth curved. "Immensely. You looked like you were about to buy his company just to fire him." "An appealing option," he said mildly, "but unnecessary. We have other plans." I glanced back through the cafe window. Nathan stood there, watching us, jaw tight, eyes calculating. Good. Let him wonder. For the first time since this whole mess began, I felt something dangerously close to satisfaction. Lucian's office was everything my apartment wasn't. Quiet, polished, and smelling faintly of leather and something darker, like rain on stone. If libraries married law firms and had a child who collected antique secrets, this place would be it. Floor-to-ceiling shelves lined the walls, books crammed together with no visible system. Though I suspected. He had one in his head, the kind of system that also included exit strategies and blood oaths. Heavy curtains muted the winter sun, painting the room in late afternoon gold. A long walnut table sat in the center, covered in papers that didn't look entirely ordinary. Some were blank until you looked sideways, where faint symbols glimmered like they were shy. And behind that table sat Lucian, rolling up his cuffs with the precision of a man who probably organized his knives by sharpness. He gestured toward the chair opposite him. "Sit, Ember." I sat, feeling like I should have worn armor. Or at least waterproof mascara. He poured coffee from a silver French press that looked older than the building. The steam curled in shapes I suspected weren't entirely natural before dissolving like well-trained ghosts. "You drink a disturbing amount of coffee," I said. "I appreciate things that keep me awake," he replied smoothly. consciousness, conversation, occasional mayhem. He slid a mug toward me. Do demons get caffeine jitters? We get bored, he said dryly. Much worse. I wrapped my hands around the mug, letting the heat sink into my fingers. The coffee was, annoyingly, the best I'd ever had. Figures. Lucian leaned back, steepling his fingers. We should clarify your situation? By situation, I said. You mean the glowing tattoo on my wrist that keeps warming up like it has opinions? Precisely. The covenant seal binds us until its terms are fulfilled. Which are? He tilted his head, studying me with those amethyst eyes that saw too much. Protection, leverage, a satisfactory resolution to your grievances. Sounds like a lawyer's Tinder bio, I muttered. One corner of his mouth twitched. You want this resolved quickly, I understand, but the bond cannot be broken until its purpose is served, or until I release you. Right, the voluntary release thing, I said. The part where my freedom depends on whether you feel generous one day. He didn't deny it. I leaned back, folding my arms. And in the meantime, what? We're roommates, teammates, victim and morally ambiguous captor? I prefer the term counsel, he said mildly. I sipped my coffee, scowling into the steam. Can you hurt me? No. His tone was flat, certain. The bond forbids it. Well, that's vaguely comforting. He studied me for a moment, the way you might study an interesting crack in a dam. But nor am I obliged to release you from it. That decision remains mine. I tried to picture yanking my own wrist free. The seal pulsed, smug. Lucian rose, crossing to a tall cabinet with glass doors. Inside sat a collection of old clocks. Grandfather clocks, carriage clocks, even a tiny silver one shaped like an apple. None of them ticked in unison. You collect time? I asked. I collect stories about time, he said, adjusting one until its hands spun backward before halting at midnight. People fear running out of it. Fascinating creatures. You say that like you're not one. His reflection in the glass was unreadable. I stopped being one a very long time ago. Something in his voice made me pause. Not dramatic, not tragic. Just empty. Like a room nobody lived in anymore. I set my mug down carefully. For the first time, I wondered if immortality came with echoing hallways and too quiet nights. Lucian turned back, mask firmly in place, all polite smiles again. Questions? Yeah, I said. Do demons have, like, LinkedIn? Endorsed for eternal torment, corporate espionage, light arson? His mouth curved. We network differently. Less coffee dates, more summoning circles? Something like that. I rubbed my temple. So let me get this straight. I can't break the contract. You can't hurt me, but you can keep me stuck to you until you decide I've, succeeded at life? Until the core grievance resolves. He poured himself more coffee. Your ex stole from you. We'll fix that. Then we'll see. I eyed him. And if I decide I like my freedom before that? His smile didn't reach his eyes. Then you'll have to be very convincing. Great. My fate depended on impressing a demon who collected clocks and used words like covenant before noon. He returned to his desk, flipping open a ledger filled with more of those faint symbols. They shifted when I looked too long, like they didn't enjoy being stared at. Do you keep normal files too? I asked. Spreadsheets? PowerPoints? He shuddered delicately. Perish the thought. I almost smiled. Almost. So what now? I asked. Now, Lucian said, capping his fountain pen with unnecessary elegance. We prepare. Nathan's presentation is next week. We'll introduce complications. The way he said complications made me suspect they involved more than bad Wi-Fi and coffee stains. He handed me a slim folder. Actual paper, warm like it had been sitting near a fire. Or something less mundane. Inside were blueprints. No, plans. For sabotaging Nathan in ways that sounded entirely legal, until you read the footnotes. You've done this before, I said. Frequently. I glanced up. You enjoy it. Lucian met my eyes over the folder. Immensely. The clocks ticked softly behind him, each on its own schedule, like they refused to agree on reality. I shoved the folder into my bag. Fine. We play dirty. But when this is over, we'll discuss your freedom, he said smoothly. Over excellent coffee. I stood, suddenly needing air. The room was warm, full of ticking and shadows, and a man who wasn't really a man at all. At the door, I paused. You ever get lonely in here? Lucian looked up from his papers, expression mild. I have time, he said simply, which was not an answer at all. Outside, the winter air hit like a reset button. My wrist pulsed once, faintly, like the contract knew we'd just escalated things. Like it was pleased. The first sign something was off came when the elevator doors sighed open on the 21st floor, and I already knew the receptionist's phone was about to ring. Not like, oh, people call offices sometimes. I knew. A prickle at the base of my skull, a tug in my gut, and then, right on cue, the phone shrilled before we even stepped out. I froze. Okay, that was weird. Lucian, of course, didn't break stride. His coat flared behind him like a particularly judgmental cape. Premonition. Side effect of the seal. Side effect? I hissed, hurrying to catch up. What else is on the side effects list? Spontaneous combustion? Demonic acne? He held the glass door for me, all gallant politeness. Nothing disfiguring. Probably. The office belonged to a tech startup Nathan had crawled into after ditching me. Their logo was all lowercase letters and self-importance, the kind of company that described itself as disruptive while selling glorified scheduling software. Inside, people buzzed around in expensive jeans, juggling tablets and stress lattes. A giant banner announced product launch tonight. Because subtlety was dead. And there, near the front, Nathan, hair perfect, smile weaponized, rehearsing his presentation in front of 2 nervous interns. I smiled sweetly and imagined tripping him into the potted plant behind him. Remember, Lucian murmured, eyes on Nathan like a cat watching a goldfish. Tonight is about appearances. We want him unsettled. As opposed to cursed? Lucian's mouth curved. Semantics. The launch party occupied 3 floors because apparently the software that told dentists when to reschedule patients required champagne fountains and a DJ. Nathan worked the crowd like he was born in a suit, shaking hands, laughing too loudly. His wife, my former best friend, hovered nearby in a dress worth more than my rent, not meeting my eyes. I didn't mind. I wasn't here for her. Lucian stayed at my side, a shadow in tailored charcoal, drawing glances he ignored with professional disdain. People made space for him instinctively, like he radiated non-refundable deposits. We reached the stage area just as Nathan climbed up to start his presentation. Ready? Lucian asked softly. For him to crash and burn? Absolutely. For your debut, he said, handing me a flute of champagne. I frowned. I'm not doing anything. He said, sipping his own drink. A shame. I didn't have time to ask what that meant, because Nathan launched into his speech, voice booming through the speakers. And then the projector behind him glitched. Just a flicker at first. A tremor in the corner of the screen. Nathan kept talking, smile unwavering, but the charts behind him jittered like they'd drunk 3 espressos. Words rearranged themselves for half a second. Synergy became sin energy, before snapping back. A ripple went through the audience. I turned slowly toward Lucian. You're doing that. He looked offended. Please. I'm a guest. The projector glitched harder. Nathan clicked to the next slide. The slide responded by inverting its colors until everyone's faces looked like horror movie posters. Somebody near the front snorted. Nathan's smile tightened. Lucian sipped his champagne like the picture of innocence. Corporate tech, he murmured. So unreliable. I bit my lip to keep from laughing. By the time Nathan wrapped up, sweating slightly, voice cracking on, The last thank you. Half the audience was whispering behind programs. The applause was polite in the way funerals are polite. Nathan climbed down, jaw tight, scanning the room until his eyes landed on me. I raised my glass in a silent toast. Lucian, beside me, looked like he'd just watched an opera he found moderately satisfying. Nathan approached, smile back in place but thinner now. Ember, he said, like the name cost him. Enjoy the show? Thoroughly, I said. Though the slides were a little haunted, his smile didn't move. Glitches. Happens everywhere. Of course. I tilted my head. Shame about the investors leaving early, though. A flicker in his eyes. He covered it fast. We'll follow up. Lucian finally deigned to speak, voice smooth as silk over a blade. They seemed unconvinced. Nathan turned to him, clearly reevaluating the tall stranger at my side. And you are counsel, Lucian said, shaking his hand briefly. Among other things, something about the way he said it made Nathan's smile tighten another notch. After Nathan slunk off to schmooze what was left of the crowd, I cornered Lucian near the balcony. The city spread out below, glittering under winter haze. You enjoyed that way too much, I said. He leaned on the railing, looking maddeningly unbothered. He needed humility. I provided opportunity. Opportunity? For him to fail gracefully, Lucian said. He chose otherwise. I stared at him. Do you always talk like a fortune cookie written by Satan? Only on Thursdays. I opened my mouth, then shut it again when the banner above the stage snapped, free of one corner, drooping exactly onto Nathan's head mid-conversation. Lucian didn't even look. Wind, he said. There's no wind in here. Fascinating. I sipped my champagne, watching Nathan struggle with the banner while pretending nothing was wrong. For the first time in months, maybe years, I felt taller. Like I wasn't the girl he left behind with empty code and an emptier apartment. Like, maybe I wasn't the punchline anymore. Lucian glanced at me, unreadable as ever. Shall we go? The night's work is done. I set down my glass, feeling the pulse of the seal on my wrist. Warm, steady, alive. Yeah, I said. Let's go. Nathan could keep his haunted projector. I had bigger plans. The rooftop was quieter than I expected. For a city that never shut up, this place felt suspended above the noise, just wind. The hum of traffic below, and the occasional red blink of a distant plane. The skyscraper roof stretched wide around us, rimmed with a railing I didn't entirely trust, the concrete beneath my boots cold enough to sting through the soles. Lucian leaned against that railing like gravity owed him rent. The city lights painted him in fractured gold and blue, the glow clinging to the sharp lines of his suit, the curve of his jaw. If he noticed the wind tugging at his hair, he didn't show it. You brought me up here for the view? I asked, hugging my coat tighter. Perspective, he said. His voice carried just enough to rise over the wind. Also, fewer eavesdroppers. Ah, I said. The sinister rooftop confession vibe, very subtle. He didn't smile, which worried me more than if he had. For a long moment we just stood there, the cold air smelling faintly of snow, the city alive beneath our feet. Finally, he said, You should understand the nature of your situation. Situation, I repeated. That's what we're calling magical indentured servitude now? He ignored that. The covenant cannot be broken by you. Not by lawyers or loopholes or clever tricks. The only release possible comes if I, voluntarily, end it. The words hit harder than I expected, like the wind shoved them straight through my coat. So my freedom depends entirely on you. Yes. No pressure, I muttered, staring out at the glittering streets below. He rested his hands on the railing, long fingers pale against the dark metal. I did not plan this, he said finally. You were supposed to sign something temporary, a simple bargain. A convenience. Romantic, I said. His gaze slid toward me, sharp even in the dim light. You signed in blood, Ember. Yours. However accidental, that changes things. I remembered the strange heat of that pen, the way my pulse had jumped when I scrawled my name. I'd been angry, reckless, humiliated after running into Nathan at that bar. I'd wanted power, even if it was just over my own life for once. And now here I was, contract glowing faintly under my sleeve like it was smug about the whole thing. So, I'm stuck, I said. Bound, he corrected softly. I turned to face him. And you? What do you get out of this? His expression didn't change, but something in his shoulders did. A faint tension, quickly erased. Less than you think. More than I expected. Cryptic, I said. Very on brand. A ghost of a smile flickered across his mouth. There and gone like a match in the wind. The silence stretched. I could hear my heartbeat over the distant honking below. You regret it, I said finally. For the first time since I'd met him, Lucian looked human. Not in the sense of skin and bone, but in the way his eyes drifted toward the skyline instead of holding mine like he always did. I didn't want this for you, he said. Mortals change when they're bound to magic. It stains things. I frowned. Stains things? Lives. Choices. His jaw tightened. People? The wind tossed my hair into my face. I shoved it back, searching his profile for something under the perfect composure. You think I can't handle it? I said. I think you shouldn't have to. For some reason, that landed heavier than all his talk of contracts and binding magic. I leaned on the railing beside him, the metal cold enough to bite through my sleeve. Well, I said, trying for lightness I didn't feel. Too late now, right? His mouth curved, not quite a smile. Yes. Too late. We stood there in the cold, city buzzing below, sky wide above. Something shifted between us, subtle but real, like the wind had carried it in. I cleared my throat. So do you, sprout wings at midnight? Perch on rooftops? Guard me from evil car accidents? That earned me a real smile. Faint but undeniable. You think I'm your bodyguard now? Well, you did say protection was part of the deal. Might as well commit to the aesthetic. He glanced skyward as if considering it. Wings would be inconvenient in doorways. Good point, I said. Tail, then? He actually laughed. Quiet but warm. Like the sound surprised him too. It disappeared into the wind almost immediately. But I felt it linger. The seal on my wrist pulsed once, a soft thrum under my sleeve, like it approved of this ridiculous conversation. I looked out over the city lights, then at him. You could end it. The contract. Right now, I could, he said. But you won't. His eyes met mine, steady, unreadable. Not yet. The wind stung my cheeks. I wasn't sure if it was cold or something else entirely tightening my chest. Then what happens next? I asked. Lucian turned back to the skyline, hands resting lightly on the railing like he held the whole city steady. Next, he said, we make sure your charming ex-partner learns what it means to lose. I smiled, despite the chill. That sounds almost fun. Almost? Depends, I said. On how much property damage you allow? Minimal, he said smoothly. Probably. The seal on my wrist warmed again, like it didn't believe him either. For a long moment we just stood there, wind tugging at coats and hair. Two people. One mortal. One definitely not. Looking out over a city that didn't care either way. Finally I said, if wings ever happen, I'm naming you Pigeon. He sighed, and the moment was almost dignified. The smile crept up on me slowly. Small but real. For the first time since this whole mess began, the binding on my wrist didn't feel like a cage. It felt like a beginning. The office party looked exactly like every tech party I'd ever hated. Bad lighting, worse, music, and too many men named Chad explaining cryptocurrency near the guacamole table. I stood with my third sparkling water because someone had to stay conscious and tried to remember why I agreed to come. Oh, right. Nathan. Nathan, who was already holding court near the bar, laughing like someone paid him per decibel. His wife wasn't here tonight. Probably busy spending his stock options somewhere with better lighting. He spotted me, of course. Because of course he did. "Ember," he said, sliding through the crowd like a shark in cufflinks. "You look great." "You said that last time," I said flatly. "Well, it's still true." He smiled the way people smile before they sell you a used car. "Listen, I've been thinking about what we talked about. About us." "There is no us," I said. He leaned one elbow on the table, voice dropping like we were conspirators instead of exes. "You don't have to do this alone, you know? Whatever this thing is you're chasing, investors, projects, whatever." I stared at him. "Are you offering me a job?" "Because I already have one. It involves not getting stabbed in the back." He chuckled, low and practiced. "I'm offering you security. You and we were good together. You had the ideas, I had the execution. We could build something bigger than before." I said. "And by together you mean you get the credit and I get the ulcers?" His jaw tightened just slightly. "I'm saying you can't keep up this independent streak forever. At some point, you'll need someone who knows the game." I opened my mouth to tell him exactly what I thought about the game, when a familiar voice cut in, smooth as polished glass. "Ah," Lucian said, materializing beside me like the dramatic entrance was in his contract. "The prodigal partner." Nathan turned, sizing him up. "And you are..." "Counsel," Lucian said, shaking his hand briefly, like he was checking Nathan for structural weaknesses. Among other things. The "among other things" carried enough weight to make Nathan's smile twitch. "We were just talking about opportunities," Nathan said carefully. "Ember knows she can't handle everything alone." Lucian's expression didn't change, but the temperature in the room seemed to drop a degree. "Alone? She seems to be handling you just fine." Nathan laughed like he thought he was winning. "You think you know her?" Lucian tilted his head, eyes cool as deep water. "Better than you did." That hit. I saw it in the flicker behind Nathan's eyes before he masked it with another smile. "She likes ambition," Nathan said, voice sharpening. "Always has. That fire, that drive. I gave her a stage for it. What do you give her? Shadows and riddles?" Lucian's mouth curved, humorless. "I give her the truth. Something you seem unfamiliar with." People nearby had started pretending not to listen, while obviously listening very hard. Nathan leaned forward slightly, voice low. "Look, whoever you are, you won't last. She burns through things, projects, people. This little phase, it ends. Then she'll remember who actually got her somewhere." I didn't plan to say anything. Really, I didn't. But something in the way Nathan said phase, like I was a faulty piece of equipment, snapped the thin thread of my patience. "You're right," I said, setting down my glass with a click. "I will remember. I'll remember who stole my code, lied to my face, and then acted like I should thank him for the exposure." Nathan blinked. "And," I added, heat rising in my chest, "I'll remember who actually stood by me when things went sideways. Even if he's insufferable and drinks pretentious coffee." Lucian's brow arched slightly, the only sign he'd heard me. Nathan looked between us, suspicion dawning slow and ugly. "What exactly are you two?" "Successful," Lucian said before I could answer. Nathan's smile didn't reach his eyes now. "We'll see about that." He straightened his jacket like a man preparing for war and walked off, shoulders tight. I exhaled slowly. Well, that wasn't ominous at all. Lucian watched him go, expression unreadable. "He'll dig now," he said finally. "Pry at things better left closed. Let him," I said, surprising myself. "Maybe he'll learn something." Lucian's mouth curved faintly, but his eyes stayed on the door. Nathan disappeared. Through, thoughtful in a way that made the hair on my arms lift. For the first time, I wondered if Nathan had any idea what kind of fire he was about to stick his hand into. The abandoned theater looked like it had been holding its breath for a decade. Dusty chandeliers hung from the cracked ceiling like they were ashamed to be here, and rows of velvet seats sagged under the weight of time. The stage, once red and gold, was now splintered wood and peeling paint, curtains shredded into ribbons that swayed in the draft. Lucian walked ahead of me, his steps silent even on the warped floorboards. He carried himself like this was familiar ground, like he'd been here, before the roof leaked and the walls started whispering with wind. I tried not to stare at the shadows that weren't behaving like normal shadows. "Why here?" I asked quietly. My voice bounced back, small against the hollow space. "Neutral territory," Lucian said. "No human ears, no surveillance, no witnesses, you mean." He didn't deny it. As we reached the stage, figures stepped out from the wings. 3 of them, all dressed like they'd walked off the cover of some unholy fashion magazine, sharp lines, dark fabrics, smiles with too many meanings. Demons. I didn't need anyone to tell me. You could feel it, like standing too close to a live wire. "Lucian," the one in the center said, voice smooth as oil. "You've been busy." His eyes slid to me, curious. "This, the mortal?" "Ember," Lucian said simply. I lifted my chin, pretending my pulse wasn't doing a drum solo. "Hi, lovely place you have here. Really cozy." The demon in the center smiled, like I was an amusing footnote. Her contract caused ripples. "You always did like bending rules, Lucian. But this," he gestured toward me lazily, "this changes things." Lucian's expression didn't move. "The covenant is binding." "Exactly," the demon said. "Too binding. Power like that tips scales. Some of us want balance. Some of you want control," Lucian said flatly. The air shifted, warm 1 second, sharp as ice the next. The 2 demons flanking the leader moved subtly, like pieces on a chessboard. I realized then, this wasn't about me. Not really. My little disaster of a contract had become ammunition in whatever Cold War simmered between these creatures. And Lucian was outnumbered. The leader stepped closer, shadows trailing like smoke. "Release her. End it now, before this gets complicated." My stomach dropped. End it. They meant me. Lucian didn't blink. No. The air went very still. The leader's smile thinned. "Then the choice will be taken from you." That was when the stage lights, dead for years, flared to life. Magic rolled across the floor like thunder with no sound. Symbols burning into the wood around us in a circle that tightened fast. The other demons moved to complete it, their lips shaping words I didn't know but felt in my bones. Lucian swore under his breath and stepped in front of me, eyes dark as storms. "Stay behind me." The circle snapped brighter. The air smelled like ozone and old paper, and something older than both. I didn't know what I was doing. I just knew if they finished that spell, whatever happened next wouldn't be good for either of us. "Lucian," I said, but he didn't look back. So I did the only thing my panicked brain offered. I grabbed his hand. The moment our palms met, the seal on my wrist burned gold hot, flaring brighter than the circle. Light shot through the symbols on the floor, ripping them apart like someone had yanked a cord from the wall. The magic stuttered, died. Silence slammed down, heavy and absolute. The demons stared at the smoking floorboards, then at us. My hand still in Lucian's. He looked down at me slowly, something unreadable in his eyes. The leader's smile was gone now. "Interesting," he murmured. "Very interesting." Then, with a glance at Lucian that promised this wasn't over, the 3 of them vanished into the shadows, leaving only the smell of ash behind. I let go of Lucian's hand like it burned. My pulse was everywhere at once. "You should have left," he said finally, voice low. "Yeah, well," I said, my mouth dry. "I'm bad at doing what I should." For a long moment we just stood there on the ruined stage, dust settling. Around us, the city lights bleeding through the cracked roof above, and I knew, whatever line I wasn't supposed to cross, we'd just stepped over it. The rooftop looked different at dawn. Same cracked concrete, same rattling vents, but the city below had softened, edges blurred by the early light glass towers catching pink and gold like they were embarrassed to be awake this early. Lucian stood at the railing, coat fluttering in the chill wind, watching the sun drag itself over the horizon. The night's fight still clung to him. The theater, the demons, the circle of magic burned into the floor, but his shoulders were loose now, like he'd finally set something down. I joined him, hugging my coat tight. "So," I said, voice hoarse from too little sleep and too much adrenaline. "This the part where you tell me we're doomed?" He glanced at me, eyes reflecting that ridiculous sunrise. "No. This is the part where I fix what I broke." Before I could ask, he reached for my wrist. The seal warmed under his touch, gold light curling through the marks like it was waking up. For a heartbeat, I felt the bond between us. The tether humming through, bone and blood, through whatever parts of me didn't have names. Then he spoke a word I didn't know. The light flared and shattered. I gasped. The glow dissolved into the air like it had never been there, leaving only bare skin and the echo of something pulling free deep in my chest. It was over. Lucian let go, expression unreadable. "You're not bound anymore." I stared at my wrist, then at him, just like that. "You could have done this the whole time?" "I could have," he admitted. "But now I wanted to." Something in my chest did a strange, traitorous flip. Down below, the city kept moving, cars crawling, lights blinking, life refusing to pause for my personal apocalypse. Nathan felt very far away now. The anger, the humiliation, the nights replaying every word. I realized, suddenly, he wasn't even part of this ending. Or beginning. Lucian was watching me carefully, like he didn't know what I'd choose now that the choice was mine. I smiled faintly. "So what now?" "Hellish victory party?" His mouth curved. "Breakfast." "I'm hungry." I laughed, the sound startling in the cold air. "That's it? No dramatic exit?" "Later," he said, offering his hand like a perfectly ordinary man. "If you want one." I took it. The sun climbed higher, painting the rooftop gold, and for the first time in a long time, the future didn't look like a cage. It looked like possibility.